Jenner and AWS. I actually never thought that I'll probably make a video on these two in single context, but as they say never. Back in 2015, when Kylie Jenner was launching her first beauty product, her lip kits, she had everything figured out, mainly from product wise, but not from the back end wise, like what would host the website or where will data for all her consumers go. She had a big problem to solve, and that too in a very tight time frame. So she reached out to AWS and sat with the AWS architects. No, just kidding. She reached out to a third party tech team, and this is their backend infrastructure setup story from back then. Almost few weeks prior to the launch, Kylie Jenner beauty website was designed and ready to be hosted. It was designed using WordPress and WooCommerce, and they needed a place to host the website lipkitbykylie.com. Now, WordPress and WooCommerce are not bad technologies in itself, but they're good for publishing content, not like a major Cyber Monday online sales scenario. But given that some work had already gone into it, redesigning from scratch was also not an option. So they needed a quick fix. But for that, they first needed to understand what is the max threshold they were even set up for, like the maximum number of user requests they can even handle for an overall good user experience. They had run some initial checks and quickly noticed that the website was not even handling moderate amount of traffic. So they started removing any unneeded requests. That's a reasonable place to start with. So they deployed their code base into a highly available auto-scaling architecture with web instances running website code in front of an RDS relational database service pair. So their initial architecture could have looked like this. You have a load balancer to handle incoming requests from users for information and other services. For the unaware, load balancers sit between the servers that handle these user requests and the internet. Once a request is received, load balancer first determines which server in a pool is available and online and then routes the request to that server. An auto-scaling group is also set up which can increase or decrease the compute, memory, or networking resources available based on traffic spikes and usage patterns. You also have availability zone set up for your RDS DB pair, which offers physical redundancy and resiliency into your backend infrastructure, allowing for uninterrupted performance. Retail transactions demand all of this and much more, so you have to have strong consistency as well. Like imagine you sold more lip kits than you have accounted for or even manufactured for. That will create like a nightmare of back orders and a whole lot of problems that you don't want to get into. Now, with this initial setup, they used a tool like Gatling, which can model complex multi-page user interactions and produce useful summary reports for them. They started slowly increasing user traffic, and if infrastructure could handle it, great, increase it with some more traffic. If not, optimize the infra and move on. By doing so in iterations, they could identify areas of improvement and came up with what we call separation of concerns, and they started handling them one by one. First, they cloned the existing original website into a second customer website. The OG one retained WooCommerce plugin and functionality with cart and store checkout options, while this customer clone website was only acting as a catalog website without all the plugins or heavy duty stuff and linking each product in this catalog website to the equivalent add to cart functionality on the OG site. So what it did was it made the whole products catalog completely static, which makes sense if you think about it. At first, you simply want to browse what products are there, right? So they used something like httrag to scrape original website into an AWS S3 bucket, which was then distributed via CloudFront. What this did was a massive portion of DB requests were completely cut off as catalog was the first landing place for any customer. Next step was scaling front-end processing power, which meant increasing number of web instances and size of these instances to handle increased workloads. And they also switched from Apache to Nginx, which allowed them to increase number of PHP workers to process more user requests per instance. Now, what about caching? We all love caching. For caching the requests, they created an Elastic Cache cluster and W3 Total Cache to cache DB queries and objects. But WooCommerce pages explicitly disable caching for consistency. So not much improvement there. Next comes the main source of data, the database itself. To counteract the caching concern, they ended up provisioning largest MySQL DB available at the time, but that also failed. So they switched to Amazon Aurora. Now, to put it simply, it offered them with superior scalability and availability than a regular MySQL RDS at that time, with which they saw it hit 35K selects per second during a peak workload on a Cyber Monday. And it satisfied their initial criteria. So, with that, the final production infrastructure could have looked like this. Lot of known components again, but this was now built to scale, adapt to increasing user requests, and was also made fault tolerant. In the end, with this setup, they improved performance almost by 160 times and they could hit their initial goal of 100K user sessions in 10 minutes, which was the absolute best they could do with the initial WooCommerce setup. Now, on the D Day, when floodgates eventually opened, traffic rapidly increased and it went way beyond what their 160x improvement could even handle. But since the stock was sold out so quickly as well, they were able to switch traffic from web instances to a static out of stock website within minutes and control user experience. So, with a little bit of oversight and a whole lot of AWS in the backend, Kylie Jenner kept up with her LipKit launch and AWS kept up with Kylie. So now both AWS and Kylie Jenner can be spoken in one single context. So that was that. Until my next video, hopefully very soon, do well and be well. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.